Hi everyone, welcome to this mini lecture in which we're going to talk about the emergence of these strengths-based approaches to counseling that somehow in the late 90s became more pronounced in the counseling and psychology domain. If we want to present a definition for the strengths-based counseling model, this definition provided by Smith in the chapter that you're going to read for this week is perhaps the most succinct definition. It's a paradigm shift from fixing deficits to nurturing clients' existing assets and resilience. Okay, obviously each of these words, such as assets and resilience, have different and very specific meanings in this definition. But broadly speaking, this is what the model proposes: moving or shifting away from deficits to skills, to capacities, to capabilities. And what do people actually have? And it might be implicitly or marginalized within their identities, but it is something that is already available and present at the disposal. The origins of this strength-based counseling model goes back to multiple disciplines, multiple shifts, as I said, perhaps earlier in this course, that were happening during the 20th century, mostly within the later parts of the 20th century. Some shifts occurred in various disciplines such as counseling psychology, positive psychology, social work, and led to emergence of even therapeutic approaches that you might be familiar with, have heard the names before, such as solution-focused therapy or narrative therapy. Okay, but broadly speaking, all of these sort of origins were somehow, implying the same kind of shift away from those deficits and, an attempt to fix the deficits and shifting to actually investing, capitalizing more on clients' existing capacities. So the aim was broadly put in this way as engaging clients in identifying and building on their strength to foster adaptive growth. There are some core concepts obviously out there, so let's just quickly go through these core concepts. So one core concept or core assumption is that the strength develop within a specific cultural and environmental contexts. Okay, so there are some cultural, some contextual, some environmental spaces and variables or sort of domains or territories out there that are conducive to development of a strength. Okay, so these spaces sort of maintain the development of this strength or encourage people to actually invest more in some of their skills or interests or passions and actually grow in those sort of direction. The other sort of assumption is that the development of a strength is a lifespan sort of thing. It's lifespan oriented and it's malleable. Okay, so strength unfold over time and can be taught or enhanced, can be gained. Okay, so people gain awareness of what they're good at, and then, well, obviously once they gain an awareness of what they're good at, well, then they probably invest more time and energy into those areas. And that is the sort of malleability that, over time, they even become better and better at that sort of capacity, skill, or strength. Okay. The other core assumption is about adaptability and functionality, that dynamic capacities that help individuals cope, self-right, and thrive. Okay. So it's not just one strength, it's not just one skill. It's usually a range of skills that people acquire from multiple domains, from not just from one cultural space, from multiple cultural spaces, multiple environments. So there's a dynamic sort of interaction. In a sense, some say there is like recursiveness between those skills and interests. And then gradually individuals help to apply the skills and the strengths acquired in one context, in other contexts, to cope, to self-right. And if you look at it from like a Maslow sort of perspective, the word that you could replace that self-right with is self-actualization, okay, self-correcting or self-realization, and then thrive. Finally, there are key strength categories. So because some might say, so what are strengths really? What qualifies as a strength? Wisdom and knowledge, obviously, some like to put intelligence in there. There's also emotions, emotional intelligence, maybe, skills and capabilities or strengths, such as being optimistic, having perseverance, being resilient, things like that. Character-related strengths, if someone has integrity, someone has courage. Relational and nurturing strengths, some people are very well adapted to, different social environments. Some people we might say that they're good at, social and interpersonal skills. Okay, some people are good at looking after other people and caring for other people and listening to other people and nurturing, other people's needs. Some other strength categories might be related to creative skills, cognitive skills, survival skills, adaptation skills, and so on. The propositions that emanate out of those core assumptions, these are called the theoretical propositions. And then obviously we get into the counseling space that is more important for us here in this course. So the three selected propositions that obviously emerge from what was sort of outlined in the previous slides is that one, humans are self-writing or self-realizing organisms who adapt to develop strength. Okay. Strength acts as buffer against mental illness. Now, this is put here in this slide because of the sort of chapter by Smith that you're reading alongside this mini lecture in this week. But what is important to pay attention here in this course is that obviously we're not talking in this course about mental illness, but still we're talking about career complexities. We're talking about problems, in that sort of, broader scale as we refer to problems. So career complexities, career problem, challenges that people face in their lives. Strength still could act as a buffer against those sort of complexities and assist individual to actually step out of those complexities. And the final proposition here is that focusing on a strength, not deficits, motivates change. If you recall, very, very minimally, I touched on this in the previous slide when I said that if people become aware of their skills and interests, if people become aware of their strengths and capabilities, that sort of self-awareness encourages them to invest more time and energy. So this is a pretty similar thing here, focusing on a strength, rather by the individual or by others, such as a counselor, could motivate change. If we skip the deficits, if we do not focus as much on the deficits, because that focus on the deficit could again lead to prioritization of narratives that might have been internalized by the person to say that, oh, you're not good at this, you're not good at that, you're not able to do that. Out of that comes the 5 core stages of counseling. In the book chapter that you're reading, and originally Smith presented 10 stages, so that's what you want to remember. But here, very briefly in this mini lecture, the 5 major or core stages that are presented obviously begin with building therapeutic alliance. It's emphasized again and again in various modalities, so it's not something that's unique to strength-based model. Building therapeutic alliance is a priority. The second and third and fourth ones are probably the most important and exclusive. So identifying a strength via client narratives, being, attending to client narratives, being curious about client narratives, being able to ask relevant, useful, and timely open-ended questions that invite clients to openly share many of the less attended to narratives in their lives, so that we can get to that strength assessment. And by assessment, again, remember what we referred to in this course to qualitative career assessment. So that's the sort of assessment that we're talking about, more of a sort of a dialogical nature, more conversational rather than actually test and tell. Framing solutions, that's the next stage. Using exception or miracle questions or techniques like that, again, to instill hope. Building competence and resilience, that's the 4th stage. And so that's by developing the developmental assets that clients gain awareness of what they are capable of building and moving forward with. And finally, the 5th core stage here is evaluating what the client has achieved, what has changed so far, what is working and what is not working in the client's life, and obviously moving towards termination. Finally, to wrap this mini lecture up is the idea of representative techniques. So some of the techniques that are perhaps the most popular or the most pronounced within the counseling and therapy field are obviously reauthoring. So reauthoring, this comes from narrative therapy. Reauthoring conversations is about assisting clients to retell their life stories in such a way that they can highlight survivor skills and strength, that they can highlight and leave those narratives that reflect their skills and abilities. Okay. Exercises such as hope chest exercise, visualizing and planning for desired positive changes in life. Exception question, again, that's coming from solution-focused therapy or narrative therapy, discovering when problems don't occur as much, and this will help the client and the counselor to generate solutions so that the client can stand against the problem. Okay. All of these sort of techniques or procedures, again, are highlighted in various domains. Again, narrative therapy, solution-focused therapy, positive psychology, social work practices that emphasize strength-based approaches. So various domains and disciplines speak almost the same language, but not always exactly identical. The implications that are here for practice is that counselors are ethically bound to focus on empowerment and reliance on cultural strength. So counselors, various counselors, not just career counselor, mental health counselors, they're all encouraged to focus on empowerment of client. And to do that, they need to rely on cultural and contextual strength. They need to be aware of the person's skills and abilities that otherwise the counselor might not be aware of those because of the cultural differences between the counselor and client. Hence, we have concepts such as cultural humility or cultural competence that counselors and practitioners need to really be humble and curious about the cultural spaces and contextual variables that shape clients' lives so that they can really tune into their lives and see what are some of those skills, competencies, strengths that clients have. This is then translated into training counselors and practitioners in a strength language. Okay, so not only learning about those sort of skills and techniques, but also helping them learn more about what is needed for them, especially if they're working with a multicultural group of clients, so that shifting away from the deficit models is actually be able to pronounce in the practice. And then obviously towards the end, as implication for practice, the idea of preventative orientation or preventive orientation, building buffers before crisis arise. So if you notice, a lot of the psychology and counseling sort of services that are existing and used to exist perhaps even more in the past tackle this issue when crisis has already occurred. So a lot of our models work with people who already are at that sort of point of time where damage has been done, and now we want to sort of intervene and help to sort of reduce the effects of the damage. But with the strength-based model, what actually becomes clear to us is that a lot of counseling, a lot of these sort of services that we provide to our clients could actually and should actually have a preventative orientation, that we should move towards building services and support strategies for our clients, for a broader range of clients, so that we introduce our field and promote our practice as such practice that has capability of preventative orientation rather than only doing things as intervention. So this is another sort of thing that emerged out of the strength-based model. I hope you enjoyed this mini lecture.